everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis, and with me today, I have once again Kelsey Atherton. You know him from Twitter. He loves to write about robots, and will use any measurements monetarily to tell you how much something costs in an F-35. Truly, Americans will use anything but a metric system. Um, Costs of F-35s, A's, B's, and C's. That's where it's at. Kelsey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Sometimes I like to also do things in Ford class carriers, which we could think of as a kilo F-35 if we really wanted to.
This is like the breakdown between like pints and quarts, tablespoons, teaspoons, half
Yeah.
teaspoons. It all eventually gets it all eventually, breaks down. What would be the lowest NSN money measurement that one would use? Like maybe just like an M16. Like I don't know how much we pay for those things. Like probably too much, but we buy them in bulk. I don't know, 10 M6.
Yeah, sometimes you could do a 50 caliber bullet. I think if you need something that's roughly in the dollarish range.
Yeah, instead of pennies, we go by 50 cal bullets. And remember, every time you go to the range and you fucking let a bunch of them down, it's just every thump is just a dollar being wasted of my tax dollars for you to fucking miss your targets. Anyway, Kelsey, I wanted to bring you on because I love to talk about robots, and you're my robot guy. Because we've talked about everything. We've talked robots. We've talked, injecting shit into our eyeballs. We've talked, all kinds of great things that the military wants to do to make our future soldiers more deadly. Obviously, I know the military likes to say like, "Oh, we want to, do that," but really, it all comes down to how much better can we kill a motherfucker? So, and the big one I think is the dog.
Oh, I was just gonna say we're fully in the era of enhanced lethality now, where the euphemisms aren't euphemisms.
Yeah, we don't need to. It's all about killing a motherfucker. Glad to see that the military is no longer skirting around that. And even though we've ended the war in Afghanistan, we still have a massive runaway military budget to that we keep giving more and more money to. And we got to dump those into something. So we got robots. Now, give the history of the robot, the dog, the General Dynamic dog. And I think that everybody knows what you're talking. It's the flat. It looks like literally a dog. It is a flat thing. It's got four legs. It can run. It can go up and down stairs and whatnot. You can kick it, and it keeps moving. And it really seems like they've hit something there with that dog. But where did that originally? Like how old is that thing? How long have we had the dog around? And what is the actual name of it? Because all we do is call it the dog.
Sure. So what's fun is there's several dogs. One of them is made by Boston Dynamics. That's the big one. Several of them have been made by Boston Dynamics. They're the company most focused on it and the one that most like actively courts good press, which we will get to shortly, I imagine. But the big thing, there's others. There's like Ghost Robotics has one that they call like the QUGV Vision 60, whatever, which is designed to be as unintuitive and inside baseball as possible. But Boston Dynamics, Spot is the big one that we see now. That's the one that comes with like the Dayglow yellow plastic casing. And it is a descendant of Big Dog, which is Boston Dynamics' like first major legged robot. And the earliest reference I could find in popular science, a place I love to contribute to, was in 2006. So that's as far back at least. We might go further, but Big Dog starts with DARPA money in 2006. The idea being a legged machine that should go where people go, and could do things that other vehicles that can't like climb hills could do.
Sure. Yeah, you can't do everything with a tread.
Yeah, and a lot of it is based on sort of dogs have been used alongside humans in war um, for centuries. For we could trace it, we could technically say millennia, but it's like 2 or maybe 3 millennia for recorded history of dogs used in war, and possibly back further. But the reason you would want a robot dog to do sort of things is it's either you would use it as a scout or you would use it kind of as a mule. There's legged robots that are bigger. Famously, the Marine Corps tested and rejected a a Boston Dynamics robot called the LS3 or Legged Squad Support System, which was designed to carry a bunch of packs into combat in hills and stuff. And the reason they rejected it is it because it was I believe it was still like a diesel engine, and it was so goddamn loud. Um, and there's no point of sneaking around the forest if you have a robot that's grinding away like a semi truck.
To be fair, though, that would be fucking frightening. Though, is to just hear this like grinding coming through the woods, and then a robot, this little fucking dog robot, just comes out, just belching. I appreciate that they managed to make something that continues to just be a horrible polluter too. Just like if you can't hear it, don't worry, you're gonna see the plume of smoke because fucking the sergeant over there is rolling coal in in our LS3 here.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of the things where, um, like the Marines tested it in their Pacific exercises, and like this is not actually what we want. And then they tested smaller ones, um, and so the LS3 was rejected as like it would do a useful thing, right? You could put your backpacks on it, but not at the price they were willing to pay. Of it's super loud. Um, Horse sized. This one was horse sized, and there's like a the wiki for it has this
Oh
amazing.
yeah. I'm looking at a picture of it now.
There's this great like fucking Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun esque art on this thing. Um, Messy. So the
I
one they
love that
have,
the head of it looks like it looks like it's got a RPG cage on it.
yes, yeah, it's a mess. So what they moved on to, and what we've seen is Spot is sort of the successful robot to come out of all. The engineers will say all the robots were successful. They learned from them. They worked. They moved. But the Spot is the one that has actually seen a lot of use. It's much smaller. This is the one that is more dog sized. This is a robot that has been famously deployed with NYPD. Uh, Massachusetts police were using it for a while. I think it was state. It might have been Boston local. I'm not 100%. Um, Over the summer, in what was spun as a feel good story and is a deeply unsettling, is police in Honolulu used a Boston Dynamics Spot robot to check the temperatures of homeless people as part of like helping or at least inspecting about COVID.
That's that therein is the fucking dystopia. It's just like and like having a robot take temperatures and things like that in like a medical setting makes sense to me. Like, yeah, go over to the machine. The machine will take all your vitals. Put your arm in the machine. It'll laser your forehead, get your temperature, whatever. We'll be fine. But like, just to be like, do they even warn the homeless people? Like, hey, a robot's going to come up and we just want to get, some medical stuff from you guys to make sure that nobody's got fevers and COVID and whatnot.
I
And like,
think
what's your
so.
reprisal against that if your answer is fucking no?
Yeah, so I have no idea. It turns out the local news stories that talk about these robots do not particularly emphasize how the unhoused people felt about being interacted with a robot, but it was like uh, sold as and billed as this is a way to protect officers from the risk of disease, which is also what PPE is for. And I get that you can always distance things further, but it's a wacky thing to do. It's like, no, it's fine. It's not dehumanizing. The robot that takes the temperature is shaped like a dog.
But it's not. It just has four legs. Like, it's not even really. They didn't even give it a
Yeah,
head. Like, it looks like every horror idea of like a police like robot that you could ever imagine. Like, I I go to my local grocery store and there's a little robot that glides around like checking stock and stuff like that. That's fine because like I can push that over if it gets a little too froggy with me. But like, this thing is low to the ground. You can kick it. You can't really do anything about it. And like, if you see one just like wandering the streets, what what do I do? Like, in my neighborhood, my immediate thought is to go get a shotgun, but I don't even know. Like, I mean, these things are made out of plastic, but as soon as the St. Louis Police Department has one roving around to come and do like wellness checks on it, like what do I get to do here with this? Like, where does the robot incursion kind of end? And can I castle law the shit out of one of these things? Is really what I'm getting to.
I Yeah, so there's probably precedent based on what has happened with quadcopters in police or private use. There's certainly been um, a lot of people figuring out how to like sort of interact with robots and guns. That happened like basically a decade ago as police started rolling out quadcopters and stuff. The other thing with it is there's guides about Spot that emphasize how to remove the battery, and Spot has a like clear release lever. You have to be close enough to physically like grab a lever and pull the battery out, so it's not a recommended thing. But you can see that these circulate whenever any robot dog is in the news, regardless of what robot dog it is. People will talk about here is how you capture the here's how you take the battery out of the robot you're faced with.
Can you just flip them over like a turtle? Just kind of, or do their legs like go the other way and then they're back up?
I can only imagine that's a future and design for a feature and design for future iterations.
Hey, like I don't want to be giving anybody ideas, but I'm sure that like the original robot is like, okay, here it is. Obviously we're gonna have to put like a key lock on the battery and put a little bit of armor on it at some point in time for all the yokels with their guns and everything like that, like me. Uh, so I'm sure that eventually they will get to that, especially when it comes to policing. And that's always the as much like because I look at this, I look at Spot and I look at the LS3, and I do think of those like this would be great, like for me to never have to carry anything again, because I'm very lazy and I would rather have a robot do it. And if you can't give me an exoskeleton, give me a robot dog. But of course, the problem always comes into is that it does not take long for anybody to like invent a thing for like immediately somebody to come around and go like, "That's cool. Can you put a gun on it though? Like, what if we put a gun on it? What could we do with a gun?" And
Yeah,
that's
so
of
that
course, any Boston Dynamics. Yeah, that's all it's going to be. Is yeah, it's cool, but can you put a gun on it? And the answer is always going to be yes.
right. And so we actually had this happen, which is it's again, I think something that really funny to me on this beat is Ghost Robotics, that other company I mentioned, put a gun on it. They just outright put a gun on their Vision 60 QUTV, which is a 60-pound scout robot with a QUTV is quad unmanned quadruped unmanned ground vehicle. That's their acronym there. But they put a gun on it. They put a gun on it at the big Army trade show in the fall, and it rightfully caught attention because here is a big dog-shaped robot where instead of having none of these robots really have heads, which is one of the unsettling things about them. But on its back, it very clearly has like a gray casing with a rifle in it. And there's an extensive thing about like here is the custom rifle company that like makes custom sniper rifles based in like Las Vegas, and they love having long range bullets on these things. Um,
Yeah, Ghost Robotics. Of course, they name it Sword and shit. Like this is the problem. The problem with putting a gun on a robot like this is that invariably, who ends up doing it is going to do it in the most cringe possible way. Like they're just gonna be like, "Look how cool we made this gun on top of a robot," and I'm not buying it. I'm sure other people are though, because a gun on a robot is kind of cool. Like, not gonna lie, it's kind of cool
I
as long as the
it all
robot's not coming
feels
towards you.
right. It all feels like this would have been neat to see on like the ground as a little detail in a fight in Mech Warrior. I get where this belongs, and where it belongs is in a game about a future war and not real life.
Yeah. Oh no, all the games that we played are coming true. Like whom's could have predicted that these horrible things would happen pretty soon? When's Elon Musk going to start doing the Command and Conquer Tesla coils that are just going to zap everybody who gets too close?
I man, once he figures out how to not destroy a monkey's brain with a neurochip, then he's moving on to Tesla coils. It's only a matter of time. We're going to passively charge every car, even if they're not electric.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say though, like Elon Musk has created a lot of things that kill people, and he's going the wrong direction. He keeps trying to make them not kill people, and it's like, man, you've already perfected what you need for the biggest like people who would give you money, which is the U.S. government. Like, here, we're gonna build a tunnel and cram everybody into cars underneath the tunnel, and then light it on fire and see what happens. Sounds good to me. I think we could get ISIS to do that. Put all their Toyota Technicals into a little underground thing. Like, no, we're hiding it. Now you're all backed up, and we're going to light the whole thing on fire. But at least it was eco-friendly while we did it.
Yeah, no, the Boring Company Raqqa division, uh, high technic, high lux storage facility.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the fucking Boring Company come out with a new version of like the Davy Crockett, like just completely not even remembering that a fucking five-man squad could launch a nuclear bomb at somebody and just be like, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? But also we made the launcher purple. Would that make it better for you guys if we were launching nukes like that? I think so. It's all aesthetics now.
It's gonna be the new Project Plowshares. Is we're gonna put a instead of bothering with a drilling machine, they're just gonna get a little nuclear weapon, and they're gonna put it on a self-driving car, and they're gonna send it into a hole, and then you're gonna have a tunnel, and then in 50 to 100 years, when the radiation is cleared, you can start building in that tunnel.
Didn't the Soviets try to do that one time? They're like, "Oh, we have a bad oil leak, so we're just gonna dig down next to the oil and like where it was coming out. They're like, we can't stop it, so we're just gonna like nuke it, and we're just gonna nuke it closed somehow." Which is a very Soviet. Like the Soviets love to just like, we need a trench here. We could get some conscripts, or we could nuke it. We got a lot of fucking nukes, so it's a lot of I feel like the robot is gonna start becoming one of those it's the hammer and every problem is just a nail. Which is put a nuke on it. It'll be fine. And honestly, like, yeah, you could like put that robot, strap a miniature nuke to it, and run it into some place. You can do with the small yield, the quote tactical nukes and whatnot. And I know every nuclear person cringes at the word tactical nuke, but hey, you know what? It's I guess it beats dropping it on them. I don't know. Look, it's all bad. Like obviously, all I want is a little robot dog to carry my drink for me when it's hot, and I don't like the condensation getting on my hands because I don't want my hands to be wet.
Before we get back to that, I can't go without commenting on this. Nuclear explosions for the national economy is the Soviet version. The U.S. version was called Project Plowshares. Both of them were horrible ideas of how do we use explosion but big and awful, to do various things, and that is where closing uh, an oil well with a nuke comes from. So, but to talk about a robot dog without a nuke but with a drink, we have seen Boston Dynamics, which again is the company that gets saddled with. Saddled is maybe the wrong word. They build robots. They come from a DARPA program. They know they've contracted with military and police. This is a lot they have chosen, but they get caught with every single robot dog is assumed to be a Boston Dynamics thing. It kind of lets Ghost and other makers sort of skate on by reputation wise, which leads us to one of the wackiest things that has happened with Boston Dynamics, where if you were in the Boston media area for the Super Bowl, you might have seen a short ad, well, not short, but an ad for some kind of beer from Sam Adams featuring a bunch of dog robots.
Not just, but also like the dancing ones, the ones that like walk. They're doing like, and they're all getting drunk too. Like I'm confused as to what, like, because just watching, it's called Your Cousin from Boston, and if any of you who have not actually like seen this, like I hadn't, and if you're like, man, I wonder if it's possible to do a hate crime against Boston. This would be it, the Your Cousin from Boston, because this whole thing is, how like everybody says that people from Boston are loud and irritating and really in your face. What if I just made that my personality and we proved everybody right? And now they're selling Boston beer, which is also loud and in your face and unnecessary. And they're doing it with these robots. They got a bunch of the dog robots. They've got the walking robots that can do the backflip. Then at one point they put one of the robots on like a printer so it could photocopy its ass. and then obviously they're getting drunk at the end, which is a very strange like it used I it used to be back in my day, Kelsey, back in our day, beer commercials did not celebrate the fact that you were getting trashed off of your ass with a bunch of fucking robots. Well, but then again, I'm in St. Louis. We have Clydesdales. We're classy. Um, this one, it seems really like disingenuous, and also just like it seems like this is the kind of thing that I look at this and I'm just like, this is the most obvious propaganda that is going to work on so many fucking people, and it is a little sad and a little frightening. And I kind of want to like, I hope that in like 2035 when the robot uprising starts, we can find this cousin from Boston cowering in a hole somewhere, outside of, I don't know, some Bostonian like thing from the 1700s, and I can grab him by the shoulders and I can tell him that this is all his fault. I want that to be his last thoughts. I'm getting a little dark here, Kelsey, and I apologize, but this is
I
just
mean,
very strange to me.
this ad feels in a way like something you would see in one of those prologue shorts in the Animatrix of like what was it like when people thought robots and machines were going to get along. So the ad, it's 60 seconds. It has the security guard. He's offered a beer. It should be noted it's not just Sam Adams. It is Sam Adams Hazy IPA because if there's anything people associate with Sam Adams Brewing, it's hazy IPAs. And if there's anything people aren't sick of in 2022, it's hazy IPAs.
We
And
love we love an IPA to be hazy, don't we?
we absolutely do. It's definitely the thing that I go to my crisp lager company for. Um, and so the robot, it's one of the spot robots with a arm on the back because they have not only must this dog feel friendly, it also has a like prehensile arm mounted on its back, and it tosses a can, and they have this whole thing. And then the actual one of the co-founders of Boston Dynamics is in the ad making a joke about how all the robots are getting drunk with the security. It's weird. It like just in the beer industry perspective. I talked about this with Dave Infante at his excellent Reverend Alcohol Industry newsletter, Fingers, which you can find. But there used to be rules, and I think there technically still are, that you can't show beer having an effect on people. You can't talk about the effect of a beer. You can talk about the taste in televised advertising. But I guess that doesn't matter if you're talking about robots or if you just set up your cousin from Boston character as just always like this. Um, maybe
Yeah.
he's just
Yeah,
yeah.
his personality doesn't change. It my assumption is he came into this already pre-gaming and already drunk. Like your cousin from Boston, the unexplained part of this is your cousin from Boston who is already 4 beers deep.
Right, right, and then you have the moment where like the robot takes away his phone, and stops him from texting his ex. It's a whole thing. There's a lot. It's a 60-second bit that I will be thinking about for a very long time for just how utterly strange it is. And again, the robots in it are their Spot, which we know. We know there are many stories about how it has been used with police. Boston Dynamics has an FAQ about the ethical principles they have and they follow when they sell their robots to police and the military. The Atlas robot, which is like the human sized one, comes from a DARPA program to design a robot that could, in the event of a fire on board a Navy ship, could climb a ladder, open a door, and use a fire extinguisher. That's the origin of that robot.
Why why wouldn't you just put a fire suppression system? You know what? I don't know why I'm asking that fucking question because it doesn't involve a cool robot. Is why.
And that was sort of what like in the weird era. I think like the Zumo was designed with, well, why don't we just make the whole machine the robot? And that led to its own whole set of problems. And what if we retrofit robots? When we retrofit uh, ships with robots? And like, sure, they didn't perform well. One of the mark parts of that competition is that they had to keep scaling back the challenges for any robot to be able to complete it. So DARPA had to dumb down their own or reduce the difficulty of their own tests because it was just sort of beyond where robotics were in 2013, 2014. but now
Now,
they dance, they
have
do
we gotten to the
flips.
point where a robot can? Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like everything you're explaining is like you can still, pay a person, some hayseed from Nebraska to become, a private or a seaman or whatever, and be able to do all those things, and it doesn't cost as much as whatever a robot costs. But there's a good chance that that private won't be able to do backflips. So I guess entertainment wise, a little bit different. Also, though I was gonna say, like, at least the robot won't get drunk and go drunk driving, but as the commercial shows us, it absolutely will do that.
Yeah.
Apparently, everybody's just gonna get trashed.
Clearly an aspirational mode. It's the we have unlocked the true potential of robots when they can get trashed and make bad decisions on their own.
Yeah, that's how you make them human.
Right. One of the things that comes up, and Boston Dynamics will do this a lot, is every few months or so you have a video of like here it is doing some viral dance, here it is all these things. The videos are pretty carefully edited. We don't really have a strong sense of what like the Atlas robot is, how much of it is being remotely controlled, how much of it is being sort of its own programming. Obviously, for a scripted head, it's a pretty scripted set of behaviors, and I can only imagine how many remote operators they had off screen doing all of this. Um, but with Spot, this is a robot I have seen actually like autonomously navigate tunnels, and uh, also the halls of a hotel I was staying in February 2020, because of the DARPA Subterranean
Had a
Challenge urban
robot in the
circuit.
halls.
They had a robot in the hall. So this was a whole thing. So DARPA had
Ugh.
a multi-stage competition. This is sort of how DARPA likes to do things. Now they have some projects which is just like, here's the money. If you do the thing, you move on. And sometimes they're like, here is the money. We're going to do a big spectacle here, and you can keep going, and there will keep being further media spectacle. And at the end, we get a robot to buy. Um, and this one was for robots. It was built entirely as search and rescue to navigate underground spaces. They had one that was a tunnel, they had one that was a cave, they had one that was supposed to sort of, and this was the one that was supposed to represent an urban environment. And so we went to a never finished nuclear power plant in Elma, Washington, and they had a bunch of teams sending in the robots, and they have each team got to do a run on the course for an hour, and then they got to do another run on the other. There's the rules; it's all public. But what it meant is that some of the teams had Spot robots with them, and what that meant is that at like the two hotels in Elma, teams would run a robot down the halls of the hotel because like it's just pretty straight away, but it's a pretty confined space, and then it has to navigate stairs at the end of it. It's a pretty good last minute test course if you're already staying there and you're hopped up on caffeine, not being able to sleep before your robot has to search for thermal mannequins in the disused parts of a never finished nuclear power plant.
I'm yeah, shades of Pripyat there. I'm surprised that nobody was drunk and riding them. Though I assume that at some point in time that's been attempted. Like that's the I know like there's we want to do carrying stuff, but I want a robot to just carry me around now. Fuck the
I
drink. I don't want a drink carrier anymore. I just want the robot to carry me, and I'll put a cup holder on the robot. It'll be fine.
I mean, robot palanquins seem not that hard to do. Certainly, I know, I know Disney's iterating on it at every version for in every possible iteration for Star Wars. They're working on how do we have a new kind of robot servant that makes us very aware that this is a robot servant. Um, but yeah, so there are some
But,
other
but
robots. They're still
my whole we got I got lots of problems with the Star Wars robot thing because one, they're all sentient. Two, they have free will but have restraining bolts slapped on them when somebody owns them. And three, they're given pain receptors for some reason. Like every one of them is like created to be a slave that you can beat. It's very fucking weird. It's very uncomfortable. But they got Matt Berry to voice one, so that was cool.
right. You know, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's very the whole perception of robots is a wacky thing. It's wildly it's a how we see them in popular culture and how we see them in that pop culture specifically, um, extraordinarily messy. And it's one of the things too that I would be remiss to mention, right? The military loves to look to Star Wars. They'll have you can search Stormtrooper on Divids, which is my favorite repository of public domain images that should maybe be more carefully filtered. And they'll just have them. They'll have them at like signing ceremonies. You can find like officers dressed up as Jedi, all sorts of things. But we also not just like the goofy stuff. They will also the military will name research, Air Force research projects things like Kessel Run. It's all deeply in there. They are looking to science fiction. They're like, yeah, we want more of that. And they want it, and they want the
It's
robots
because
that
they're
can
nerds.
carry.
Let's be honest.
Yes, well, absolutely, yes. It's because they're nerds, and also it's because there's some context lost or missing in what is cool and what is happening there. So one other robot I really want to quickly mention. I know I've talked a lot about a couple companies, but the army has also put in its little bit of research into robots, and theirs is fun just because it's got one of the all time great acronyms in four legged robots. It's the Legged Locomotion and Movement Adaptation, or LLAMA. That's their attempt at doing an LS3 robot mule.
You got. I swear, there's got to be an entire division of the military that I don't know about that is just how do we shoehorn an easy to say acronym in here? Like your the swarm article that you had where they name it offset, which is offensive swarm enabled tactics. Offset. Come on, guys. You could just call it the OSET. It'd be fine, but no, we have to call it offset, which doesn't make sense. It's not a word that makes sense for what it is. At least llama makes sense. A llama can carry shit.
But offset. If you name your swarm offset, then you are appealing to the specific theory of defense acquisitions articulated by former Undersecretary of Defense Bob Work and the third offset strategy. So not only is this an acronym that's designed to be a cool word, it's an acronym designed to be a cool word that allows it to sail through the acquisitions process because it's a reference to your boss.
So it's bootlicking is what it is.
Yeah. But it's dispersed and future and digital and next generation bootlicking. It's the most advanced bootlicking you've ever seen.
This is generational ass kissing right here. We don't just kiss ass on Monday through Friday. We kiss ass 2000 to 2020, baby. We gotta make sure we got longevity here. So Kelsey, that's enough about things on the ground. Tell me about things in the air. Recently, we all saw a Blackhawk helicopter be flown by remote control. What was going on there? How do you do that? Is it like in MythBusters where they just like set up a thing inside of it that moves the sticks, or like is this some sort of like thing that's like no, we have to put this all together?
So, by and large, aircraft have a lot of autopilot has gotten just in general much better in recent years. There's a greater ability of control kind of handed off to automated processes. And so, what happens with this one is they basically plugged in sort of all the kind of a lot of flying is sort of just not fucking up. You want to have your thing stay level. You want to
That
have
is
it
that is
stay.
very true.
And so you already put a lot of that is already fairly automated. You need human judgment for the talking. The human is sort of the interface between air traffic control, and you need them to coordinate with landing and coordinate with taking off, especially. But like waypoint navigation is pretty robust technology that you can do, and so you hand off a lot of that, and then you basically just turn over an AI to manage the limited, trickier human parts. Um, which of course it has a good name. This one was Alias. I'm looking up what that stands for right now.
I mean, I guess it's kind of just an autopilot. Just, a helicopter is more complicated than. I mean, like I don't want to offend pilots or fixed wing or helicopter pilots, but like I've flown a helicopter. Like I did one of those lessons where you could hey come it was a Groupon years ago that was like teach you for an hour how to fly a helicopter, and that was very difficult because you got a lot of different access points of movement. An airplane is just you go up, you go down, you go forward. That's it. There's none of this hovering bullshit. unless you're in a Harrier or one of the F-35Bs, I guess.
Yeah. So Alias is Aircrew Labor in Cockpit Automation System, which again, you can bend anything to be an acronym here. And so this is just, yeah, they handed all the functions off. They had uh, this is an autopilot that can toggle down to full control, or toggle up to full control. And we've seen it, we've seen some kind of this for a while now. There was a cargo helicopter, the KMAX, which flew automated resupply routes in Afghanistan. I want to say like 8 years ago. We've had that. So doing it with a Blackhawk is also a big expansion. Getting the more aircraft that can fly without the need for active human pilots or any humans on board lets you reduce the human load and the human risk on certain missions. It gives you a lot more options. It also means you really, really, really have to trust that you will never need a person on board to take over controls in the event of jamming or electronic warfare, or you lose GPS signal, or you lose any of the number of external and automated systems that make it work.
Well, the forward idea I would think on this is like, cool, we can, we can do this with a Blackhawk. We don't, and the idea, I guess, is like, well, if we don't need a pilot, we don't really need the troops in the back either. So let's just scrap the whole idea of a Blackhawk and build a new Blackhawk that is smaller and sleeker and just shits a bunch of robot dogs out of the back with guns on it, and we'll call it good. The ability to do this with a Blackhawk is just we have Blackhawks sitting around that we can fuck around with. And I feel like the eventual forward momentum on something like this is building things. I mean, we have drones, right? We've had drones for like the UAVs and stuff like that for forever and a day. And those things, the bigger ones are massive. You could fit a person in there if you really needed to. But it's all automated. It does exactly what it needs to do. So, I mean, it does really feel like eventually going forward, the idea is we never have to put another person in harm's way to go shoot another person, which is a fucked way of doing things and kind of destroys the military warrior mentality idea. But also that'd be good, I guess. I don't know. Like I don't know how Black Rifle Coffee Company starts selling, like robot drone strike fucking blend or whatever and make it sound cool.
Black Rifle Motor Oil. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, and the U.S. has certainly worked on automating a lot or adding in further. How can we automate these things? How can we? And it's very interesting in when U.S. companies talk about it, and especially when like acquisition people talk about it. It's all about augmenting and enhancing the existing capabilities and functions of human fighting. One of the big things we'll see is a term called manned unmanned teaming, which is a way to like you pair your $90 million or $80 million F-35 with a $3 million drone that can fly alongside it. The drone is way less stealthy, but it can still carry missiles and it can automate and it can maneuver. And the F-35 pilot has a button that says like hit these targets or whatever, and the drone does that. And in a way, it means that you can like sort of increase the numbers of what you have. It's never sold as we are expanding how many machines we can have fighting and reducing the number of them that require humans. But that's the gist, is how do you add more robots into the mix? And that's an aerial combat one. There's a lot of adding in robotic systems in the sea, underwater. There's certainly stuff to do on land and augment squads and things. And that's where you get the robot dogs themselves. You send them in first as a scout, so you don't have to have a person doing that. That's the life-saving war fighter protecting pitch and all these things. But the US isn't the only country working on this, and Russia has been pretty explicit that it wants to have this basically have a third of its fighting strength in the next, I think it's the next 10, 20 years, be robotic, that they really want to genuinely expand the size of their military by leaning on robots for the front lines.
Yeah, and the original thought that I had of this is it's like, well, it is nice that we're going to stop killing people and just start, shoving our robots into there. But also, it just means that you're removing the more human element you remove, the more emotion you remove from it. Like the more, it's just a robot can go in and just do whatever. You can program it, go in, kill everybody in this area, and never have to think, another thought about it because the robot's going to do everything. We can still do all the war crimes without any of the PTSD. Um, well, at least a much more reduced PTSD, I guess. But it is going forward. It's nice to not be the one to die, but also this is just really making war very impersonal. And I don't know how that makes it. I mean, war bad, obviously, but people dying in war is even worse. But really, the people who die the most in any war are civilians. So I mean, until we get robot civilians, war is still going to be absolute shit for anybody not actually on a death squad.
Yeah, and this is something. It's an argument I've seen. The more coherent arguments for why the military should automate violence um, is that you can hard code to a greater degree restraint and rules of war in a machine than you can in a person. Now, that's an argument that is made out there. It's a stronger argument than many, but it over there's I don't adhere to it strongly because there's a whole bunch of qualifications on machine error can happen in all sorts of new ways. You're outsourcing the liability from uh, human decision or commander decision to coder decision, which could still be held up in a court that held a war crimes tribunal, but more likely would just be sort of dispersed responsibility and washed away forever. And then there's also just a big risk that if you have a robot that can do without question, they can follow orders without questioning or doubt or without having to be convinced of orders, you open up a whole new array of possibility for harm because it's still something I do when I'm writing about these machines. I try to emphasize that this is, if it's robots doing violence, it is still human directed violence. So this is still, the robots are doing this because people are making them. These aren't autonomous machines in that they wake up, realize they have a gun attached to them, and then go and shoot things. They're doing it because people are putting them in order, and then the autonomy they have is related to how they do that, how they move in space, how they perceive their environment, and what they identify and process. But this is all human directed stuff.
Yep, and humans are gonna direct them to probably do violence or maybe carry me around my yard. One or the other. I'm cool with it. Like it's as much like obviously keep an eye on what's going on. Obviously you're going to, but I'm talking to our listeners. Keep an eye on what's going on, and keep an open mind because like robots can be very useful. Like the whole like Star Trek future, gay space communism that we're all looking for revolves around post scarcity and robots doing all of our work. So like there's nothing like when I see the dog, I see all the limitless potential of it can carry things. It can, go places that people can't go, like rescue missions, or we can send it in. We can outfit one with um, like fire extinguishers and run it into a building or something. There's so many things that it can do that are actually good, but there's always going to be the guy who says, "What if we put a gun on it?" And unfortunately, that guy's always going to get listened to because this is just the world that we live in. But I certainly don't want to. I don't ever want to be a like robot bad luddite. Get rid of them all. We get rid of the movable type. We should all go back to handwriting everything. But obviously, everything that gets invented at some point in time, somebody picks it up and says, "I wonder if I can kill somebody with this." And generally, the answer is yes. You just have to be a little imaginative about how and why and the way of death that you're going for here. Kelsey, plug your stuff, man. Tell people where they can find you.
Sure, you can find me writing about all sorts of machines of modern warfare and future warfare at Popular Science. If you want sort of essays that are more in the speculative and skeptical space, you can find my writing at Substack at Wars of Future Past. You can find me on Twitter, where I am reminding people who wonder why Russia doesn't just attack NATO that nuclear weapons exist. You can find me there at Atherton KD. And that's probably everywhere online you should be looking for me.
Hey, look at that! You and I turned out to be right. We about Russia. We defeated all of the think tankers who kept talking about an invasion, and then like any normal person was looking at it as like, they ain't gonna do shit, man. Come on. But it'd be the dumbest fucking thing they could ever do. But okay, yeah, you go ahead and tell me about how Russia is gonna step into Ukraine all of a sudden. Maybe it could happen, but it ain't gonna happen tomorrow. So fucking chill out. Of course, I say that this is gonna get released right when Russia fucking steps into Ukraine. But you know,
Yeah, I mean, I would love for there not to be a land war in the Eurasian steppe. I think that would be a very
in
cool
Asia
thing
or
to
in
have to
anywhere.
happen.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, land wars, no, not good, very bad.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
All right, Kelsey, thank you so much. Everybody else, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, a pleasure.